Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's so good to see you always. It's Kaveh Zamanian. He is the founder and whiskey maker at Rabbit Hole. He and I, well, we saw each other recently at Kentucky Derby. Rabbit Hole always has a great party. And now we're back together talking about your new founders release, your founders collection. This is the fourth one. Congratulations on this, Kaveh.
Thank you, Tom. I really appreciate it. First of all, again, thanks for having me on the show. Always a pleasure to be with you. And yeah, it's really exciting. I'm really excited about this fourth, release of our founders collection.
Well, absolutely. And we got to say, we love everything you do, from your Kaveh, your Derringer. I mean, all these, you see a couple, it's this side, this side behind me, this side.
Yeah.
There they are. There's a couple behind me. I have a couple in front of me. But I've just now poured, because I wanted to wait until that moment when I was speaking with you, pouring this Nevallier. This is really intriguing. Not only does it have a lot of age, it has just tons of depth. So what are we tasting here? Tell us about Nevallier.
Yeah, so as you guys know, we started the distillery, opened up in 2018. So Nevallier is actually a 16-year-old expression. So these are barrels, a handful of barrels that I bought back in the day when I was basically starting the company. My wife, Heather, used to say, how the hell do you know your recipes are going to be any good? And I told her I'm not sure. She said, you're going to take the family down the rabbit hole. But after that conversation, she said, why don't we buy some barrels? Because a lot of people were recommending to go to the source direction, just in case you need to go that route. And that's what we did. There was not a whole lot that I bought at the time. There's maybe a total of about 50 barrels that I bought, but I ultimately decided not to do much with them. So they just sat around. And fast forward to recently, where we decided that the Founders Collection could be a series where we have specialty recipes or older expressions of our core, or in this case, some of these kind of old dusties, if you would, that we're able to bring in and give it our own little twist and exercise our blending and finishing, talents. And that's what this is. So this is basically 10 barrels of Kentucky straight bourbon from various distilleries. It's basically a very standard high rye Kentucky straight bourbon. And we blended these 10 barrels that are 15 years old. And then we aged them for an additional year in brand new toasted and charred French oak barrels. Wow. And hence we have a 16-year-old, really kind of, the barrels were brand new. So it's really a double oak expression. And, as you pointed out, I think it's a very complex bourbon, a lot of character to it. And I look forward to hearing your thoughts about it, actually.
As I'm tasting it, I mean, obviously there's just so much going on. I can tell that it's old, right? Right away, it's at least that 15 plus mark. To me, it tastes considerably older than that. I'm sure part of that are those French barrels. But, even just, you say this bourbon is old. Obviously we know it's going to be something special, but this is an extra special with that that barrel influence. I mean, there's a definite nuance on this. There's this beauty. It's bold and powerful, but it doesn't attack your palate like some old bourbons do. I mean, it's really well thought.
And remember,
it's really good.
Yeah, and it's bottled at cask strength, right? So I think it's roughly 115 and change.
Yes.
I think that it really is balanced. It's not overwhelming at 115. It gives you a really nice, just a sensory experience from the nose all the way to finish.
Yeah, the wood's really defined. I mean, the wood is not just one noted. The wood is very multi-layered. You have an old bourbon. I mean, it's exactly what you might imagine, but more. An old bourbon with this beautiful wood influence, but together, that balance, that it actually kind of almost gives a third layer, which I'm sure is what you were looking for, that extra something.
Yeah, 100%, especially the base liquid when we blended it, before we aged it in the French oak, had, some of the basic traditional notes that you would get in a really good aged bourbon. The vanilla, caramel, and in this case, the just subtle spiciness that you get in a high rye bourbon. But I think, what the French oak did, it's bringing some really interesting flavors you don't typically get. That I think it's more in that kind of dried fruit, orange, realm, if you would, and even a little bit of a floral taste that makes it very special. It's that spicy and floral coming together.
Yeah, spicy, floral. You get a lot of beautiful spice. I mean, you get those vanillas kind of against that beautiful cinnamon and those wonderful like baking spices on a big bourbon. But it's a very elegant version of that. So Nevallier, I know the term Nevallier really represents two forests that these barrels came from.
Yeah, as you know, that we like to play around with kind of Lewis Carroll Jabberwocky, play around with words a little bit and wordsmith. And the wood, basically, the barrels come from a cooperage called Loire that is very similar to, in terms of their process, to Calvin cooperage, toasting, charring, and using essentially wood to toast and char. Right. And they procured the wood from these two forests in central France, Nevers and Allier. And we just decided to be a little cheeky and bring those two together. So Nevallier is the name of this expression.
That I love the name. And again, would these two forests usually be together in one barrel, or are they two different types of barrels? Would we usually see this on other products that were not bourbon?
Yeah, so a lot of the wood from these forests a lot of the barrels are constructed actually for the wine industry. So you see the French oak going to Bordeaux or even imported here to the U.S. And I think from that regard, we didn't really dictate exactly what ratio or anything like that. We basically trusted these guys to make the kind of quality barrel that we want, and they said that that was the combination of the wood from these two forests that they procured for these barrels for us.
So beautiful. And again, this is French oak. This is something that would typically you'd be aging a beautiful wine in from Bordeaux. This is typically what this would be used for.
Yeah, exactly.
But this is toasted. This wood was toasted.
It's toasted and charred.
And charred as well, right?
Yep. Brand new barrels. So that's why I say it's kind of really the ultimate double oak.
Yeah, it is really so deep. So as you're thinking about, you obviously with Rabbit Hole, it's really and again, I want people to hopefully they've tried Rabbit Hole, but if you haven't tried the other bourbons they do, the Kaveh, the Derringer, all of them, High Gold. But as you look at Rabbit Hole, you step in the distillery and you get to know Kaveh and the team. There's a lot of respect for tradition and the beauty of Kentucky bourbon, but then there's also this look forward. You're always doing something new and testing new waters. Talk about why it's important for you to bring that sort of originality to whiskey.
It's a combination of things. I tell folks that, first of all, one of the things that was really intriguing to me, that in the first real kind of golden age of bourbon, back in the day in Kentucky, we had over 2,000 distilleries, a lot of farmer distillers making a lot of very personal expressions.
Right.
And those varieties really went away with Prohibition and post-Prohibition. And for me, there was a little bit of a kind of a excitement about that farmer distiller kind of tradition, if you would. Pair that with the reality that I think that we're going into a very exciting phase for American whiskey, because there's so much room for creativity. We got amazing craft distillers out there and producers that are doing some really interesting things. Right. And we're beginning to think out of the box. And that's what really appeals to me. My personal mantra is just shoot me if I only have one idea. We wake up in the morning to try to do new things. And this is part of the DNA of Rabbit Hole.
Absolutely. And you're doing so many great new products, and even the gin you have there at the distillery.
Yeah.
Beautiful products. Again, you got to, if you haven't seen it already, you're going to Louisville, take a tour of Rabbit Hole. Just go check out what they do. I mean, are you in most every state now with your bourbon? Is it almost every state you're in?
Yeah, we're pretty much we're in every state in the union.
Right.
And and as I mentioned, a few international markets as well.
Yes. You keep on expanding. You're going more and more in France, the UK, Germany. Where all can people find you overseas?
Yeah, so we're right now in UK, Canada, South Korea. We're about to open up France, Germany. I think some of the Southeast Asian countries like Malaysia and Japan in the coming years. So a lot of interesting, exciting opportunities for us, and I'm really pumped to be kind of the Johnny Appleseed of bourbon across the world.
That's good. No, it's so important, Kaveh, because as we were just saying, I host these tastings in London, other places in Europe, and though there are some really good bourbons you can find in some bars, if you really look for those special bars, a lot of times in Europe, I mean, that you can find some of the standards, which are good, but we really need to see more and more of the new brands, some of our favorite brands like Rabbit Hole getting to Europe. What's that feel like when you see, hey, Rabbit Hole expanding? What's that like to you?
Honestly, it gives me goosebumps just even thinking about it, to be able to be where we are given our humble beginnings. But I think, I think spirits, just like good food, it's really about bringing people together. And in the middle of all the craziness that's going on in the world, it's just wonderful to be able to break bread with people and drink a little Rabbit Hole and just get closer. So it's I call it, I'm not the only person who's called it. It's a little bourbon diplomacy going on around the world, which is a lot of fun.
Absolutely. We love that. And Rabbit Hole was recently called or ranked the fastest growing bourbon by Nielsen.
Yeah. I think, that's another thing that's just, honestly, I got to pinch myself here because we are right now, according to Nielsen, one of the fastest growing bourbon brands in the country. And it's just, it's lovely to see that. It's great to see that the work we've put behind the brand is being appreciated by folks out there.
Absolutely. No, we really appreciate you, Kaveh. You and your team are doing great work. You're going to be headed to Europe soon yourself?
Yeah, I'm actually heading over to Paris on Monday and do a little tour of France and spread the gospel. And then we'll be back in town, actually going to New Orleans the week after for Tales of the Cocktail.
Excellent. Rabbit Hole will this be the first time you're at Tales? I'm not sure have you been to Tales before?
We sponsored and we did some stuff pre-pandemic, and during the pandemic, actually, we were a big supporter and fundraiser for Tales. It's exciting to be there in person this time, and actually have I think we're going to have a good sized Rabbit Hole team presence there too. So it's exciting.
Excellent. Rabbit Hole going to Tales, all types of other things coming up. Any other events that Rabbit Hole's doing or that you want to mention that are coming up for Rabbit Hole, even going into September, maybe?
Well, listen, the Founders Collection is a twice-a-year release.
Right.
So we were a little bit behind because of the glass complications. So Nevallier came out a little bit later, but really September going into October, we're going to have another Founders release. So you and I have to get together soon again.
I love it. So this is going to be the first of the year, the Nevallier, but you will have a whole different one in September.
Yeah,
October
time. Yeah. September, October probably depends. I got to look at the calendar, but basically Founders releases come in twice a year. And we've done Japanese oak, the French oak that you're tasting. We did the 5-grain double chocolate malt Race King. And our very first one was our rye whiskey that was offered at cask at 6 years old. So we're looking to do a couple of more of these older expressions of our core products at cask, and potentially another release of Race King, which is our 5-grain double chocolate malt.
Excellent. So before the end of the year, we will see another Founders Collection. Are you able to, not to share the news too soon, are we able to give any tease for it as what it might be?
If you don't mind, I want to hold the cards.
All right. I always have to ask, but we know it'll be something delicious, just like the Nevallier. And again, it's very limited. Nevallier is, we know how limited it is. It's pretty limited, right?
Yeah. Just under 1,200 bottles.
Just under 1,200. Be looking for them now. As you watch this live, again, tell us down below what your favorite Rabbit Hole is. I enjoyed them all. I enjoyed the Kaveh. I enjoyed that wine element, that PX sherry wine element to the Derringer. There's so many good elements of all of those. And I'm sure many more experiments to come that you'll be having.
Absolutely. Be on the lookout for it. Thank
you.
We will. Tom.
Oh, you're so welcome, my friend. Well, thanks for the chance to try the Nevallier. Again, the more I taste it, the more I get that spice. beautiful long finish. The finish is just beautiful on it. But again, that balance is boldness, but not so much boldness that, like some older bourbons, that it does too much. It's just really just right.
No, 100%. I mean, you want a little bit. I personally love that little Kentucky hug here,
Yes.
but it cannot be overwhelming. It's got to be just like a nice hug.
Well, and the 115.8, I mean, it's a big proof, but for me, I mean, I know it's bigger proof, but it is just the right balance with that wood that you don't feel overwhelmed with that proof.
Yeah, and the other thing, Tom, is that I tell folks that the Founders Collection is really also designed for folks like yourself and many others that really want to appreciate a good sipping experience, right? And are looking for something that's unique. So again, I really appreciate your comments and hope other folks can enjoy it as well.
Absolutely, my friend. Well, good to see you, Kaveh, as always. And thanks everyone for watching us here on bourbonblog.com live. And we will see you again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks for inviting me. Take care, Tom.